Oh, there we are.
Yeah. That's what you gotta give her right. They were coming over. Yeah. And then that, you know.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, you're welcome.
There we go.
Thanks, Sonia.
All right. Hello, everybody. Not sure if anybody is going to join us online here today, but let's go ahead and get set up for our fall painting. Always a little tricky to see how this is going to get oriented, so let's see. Okay, I believe that's the right way. All right, so I'm going to start off. Wow, this camera looks so dark. Let's see if I can fix it. Settings. Okay, well, let's just get started. So I have, hopefully it won't look too dark on the screen here. I have a bunch of orange since we're going to be making pumpkins for fall. This is the picture we'll kind of be working from. Hello, fall. If you want to write something else on here, like happy fall, y'all, or you know, autumn or something else, that's fine, or happy Halloween. You can do that, and then we can even like make these Halloween pumpkins. But the idea is that we're going to start off doing the background, kind of a darker color. I think I'm going to do more of a bluish instead of blackish. And then I'm going to do these large shapes for the pumpkins. And then at the very end, we'll add the little details and the writing. Okay. So I'm going to start off just getting a little bit of orange, but mostly I'm looking for this color that I'm going to put back here. Okay. So I'm going to do mine bluish, blackish. So I'm going to put a bunch of blue and add some black to it. I just bought black. I'm going to open this up all the way. So if you guys have not done any classes with me online, normally I have a bunch of ladies in here and I'm just kind of rambling on and on talking, but you know, without anybody else here, I can kind of focus on the Zoom portion of this a little bit more. Maybe sound less random. All right. So just getting the black set up here. Okay, so just going to darken this color. You know, alternately, if you want to paint and you want to buy a different color, like a dark blue or something else for this background color, you can do that. I'm just mixing up some paints just because, you know, people generally tend to have black and blue. I have my water ready. I have a couple of different size brushes ready. So kind of big, medium, and small. We really don't need to get too detailed on here. Just maybe a thinner brush to do the writing. Okay. So I'm going to darken up my blue and I'm going to just take a little bit of black at a time and mix it with this regular kind of royal blue color. And I'm just looking to kind of tone down that dark, the brightness of the blue, because I want it more like almost like a grayish blue. And this blue, it's like a craft paint, so it has a little bit of white in it. So when I add black, it's actually going to like mix a gray kind of in the mixture already. So I just don't want it to be pure black. I want it to be a nice like grayish kind of blue. So it looks really dark on the screen, but it's actually kind of more like a let's see. You know what? I'm going to add more blue just so you guys can see it on the screen. It's not quite as dark as it looks on that. Okay, that actually looks closer to what this one actually looks like in real life. So I'm just going to add them on here. All right, so once I have this blue mixed up in the background, I want to start to put the paint on here, but you know, I don't want to necessarily put it all the way where the pumpkins are. I just kind of threw some on here. So I know that up here is going to be the smallest pumpkin, and this one's going to be kind of falling off the edge here. So I can start, and you know, even though I put blue here, it's okay. I can just paint over it. I know my pumpkin, the smallest one, is going to be kind of falling off the edge here with a little bit of this corner, you know, painted in up here. So I'm going to go down a little bit, and this canvas is 11 by 14, so I'm going to go down 2 inches. If you're doing this on a smaller canvas, maybe 9 by 12 or even 8 by 10, which is pretty small, you know, just kind of use the reference image as a guide. Okay. So then down here on this bottom corner, I can see that I'm coming in a little bit of this section. So same thing down here on my canvas, the bottom here. I'm just going to go down a little bit, like, okay, maybe like it's coming in a few inches from this side. So I can just kind of have a general placement of where these two are going to go. This is the top pumpkin, this is the bottom pumpkin. So I'm just starting to lay it out. So then from here, I'm looking at the picture still, and I can just kind of brush in, okay, here's this big pumpkin. I'm just going to make a big kind of oval just to kind of represent where this big pumpkin is going to go. Really lightly, I'm not really worried about making it the perfect shape. And then I know my smaller pumpkin is up here. So maybe I'll just brush in really lightly where this pumpkin's going to go. And then in here in between, there's kind of this middle pumpkin. And you really don't want to stack them up too neatly, because then you're going to start to make it look like kind of like a snowman. So make sure these are kind of like jumbled looking. So here's my second pumpkin. I'll even outline this a little bit with black so you guys can see it against the blue a little. This is where that second pumpkin is going to go. You know, I think this is really confusing with this blob right here. So I'm going to just lay it out one more time on another one. I'll just paint over this one later. Just because I want it to be really clear so you guys following along can kind of see it. All right, so one more time. Coming down a little bit from the top and just kind of getting an idea where that top one's going to go, right? And if you guys are looking at a reference image for anything else, it's always a good habit, you know, if you want to lay things out, to look at the corners and kind of see where things are coming in from the corners. This one came in a couple inches here, and it made that big pumpkin shape on the bottom, like a big oval going off the edges. You can see here it's kind of going off this corner. Okay. And then this is the small one over here. And over here, I'm making the whole circle, but you know, the middle one is going to overlap that one. So it's going to be kind of like coming in this way. Okay. And as you're looking at the image, just, you know, try to get this kind of outlined. It's almost like a squished down ball. Like imagine like you're squeezing a ball. So it's like the top has been squished down. So here I'm trying to add this little dip just to show that it's squished down. All right, and this is just the basic kind of outline of where these pumpkins are going to go. Okay, so we have the one on the top here, middle one, big one on the bottom. Okay, then from here, I can go ahead and paint the rest of the background. So kind of have an idea where those pumpkins are going to go. I can use this same brush that I have here, which is about, I don't know, fingers wide. Or I can go in for a bigger brush and get things done a little bit faster. And if your paint is starting to dry up on the tray, add a tiny bit of water on your brush, but don't make it too runny. This is just like a little cheap kind of craft brush, so you don't really need anything fancy for this. Another, you know, other colors that you might consider for the back. Maybe you want to make it black, more spooky. Maybe like a dark green, maybe like brown. I would just say nothing that's going to be too orangish. So even if you do brown, not a brown that's too orangey, or else your pumpkins are not going to stand out. Maybe even like a purple would work. Even white, if you wanted to make it a much brighter background, white would work. Let's see if there's anybody that's joining. Okay. So anytime you are joining online, joining the class online, it's always a great idea to join, because then I can kind of give you tips and advice as you are painting. And, you know, it's nice to interact with somebody online, and then you can also interact with any of the people that actually came to the class in person. So it's always fine having somebody, and you don't have to show your face or anything, or even show what you're doing if you don't want to. There's no, requirement for that. So feel free to join during the class if you ever want to. All right, so now I have a lot of my background filled in. I'm going to go ahead and just add a little bit in these corners. Maybe I'm going to go back to my smaller brush and just add a little bit in these corners. So I have most of this filled in, and then I'm just getting these little corners in here and just making sure I go all the way to the edge of the canvas. That's going to be in there. That's going to be in there. All right, so I have an idea here where that corner is going to go. Okay. So that's going to be drying a little bit. And if you notice this texture in the background, it's like a white streakiness, and that's meant to kind of make it look like a wooden kind of color, or a wooden kind of texture. Make it look like maybe it's like a wooden fence in the background, or wooden planks. So you can choose to do that, but if you pick a random color and, that won't work for that, we can just turn that into any other kind of texture. I'm going to go ahead and do it just in case you want to just follow this. So I'm just going to get some white, and I'll show you guys how to make that texture. Okay. So this is a little bit white. And the way to do this is to get a brush that's not wet. So this is kind of a newer one. I haven't gotten this one wet yet. And when I dip it into the paint, I'm just going to dip a little bit like this. And then somewhere kind of in a blank area on the tray, or maybe even on like a wax paper or palette, I'm just going to brush it onto the rest of it like this. Okay. So it's picking up some of that white, but it's not super soaked on the whole thing. And I'm just going to try it. If I need more paint, then I'll get some more. So then I'm just kind of brushing it on here like this. Okay. So it's making like a streakiness. Okay. You're going to get some blue on there if your paint is still wet. So I don't mind that it's wet. I'm just going to wipe off some of that blue. Get a little bit more white. And I'm just kind of tapping it. I didn't get more than maybe like a dime amount, right? And this is kind of a big brush, so it'll kind of spread. Okay. If you have a smaller brush, you can do it with a smaller brush, but just keep in mind that, you want to use less paint. So I'm just kind of getting this like streakiness back here. You're re-dipping it. Okay, and if you mess this up, not a big deal. You can always put more blue paint or background color paint over it. But I kind of like how this looks textured like this. Add even more there. So it just gives it a little bit of like a roughness. Okay. This is how it looks with the white. Okay. If you want to do it with maybe another color, you can. I think this looks fine to me. So maybe I'm going to go in here with a little bit of this regular blue that I have and see if I can just kind of brush a little bit of that Now it's looking more like a navy blue. Okay. And it's always good to have paper towels on hand so that you can just kind of take some of the extra paint off here. I'm just kind of wiping it on this little napkin. And then of course have your cup of water ready to go. Okay. So this just kind of gives it a brush feeling. Let me see if I can turn this light on. This camera has light. Oh, I see exposure. Oh, there we go. Okay, no wonder it's so dark. Here we go. So now it's looking more like that navy color that I was trying to show you guys. So it has a little bit of this blue mixed in. It has the white streaks. And so I just kind of added a layer of that navy, that color that I had originally. I added it on here. Now the colors are more accurate. All right. So that's going to take a second to dry. I'm going to switch over to a bit of a medium-sized brush, probably going back to the one I kind of started with. And I'm going to try to get that blue off of there. And with this, instead of starting with the orange pumpkins right away, I actually think it's a good idea to go in with white first and kind of get an idea of where these outlines of the pumpkins are going to be, the final ones, and even maybe even brush in some of these stems. So we're going to paint, you know, the colors on here, purple, orange, brown, but just to get an idea where this is going to go, okay? Especially because our shapes initially were very kind of blob-like, okay? So I'm just going to get white, okay? And on this bottom pumpkin, looking at the picture, okay, I'm going to just kind of outline where I really want this edge to go. So maybe I'll start with, I don't know, the stem right here. It kind of does this like loop. And this is just with white. And the white I'm putting on here because I wanted to kind of block off some of this blue so we could really see where we're going with this. So, and then this, I think I'm just going to make this edge come up a little bit more. Just kind of even this out. There we go. Okay, and that little spiral is going to come in and then over. Okay, so I'll do that later. On this one, I'm going to make this stem a little wider. It's pretty wide on this picture. And then I just want this to kind of curve up a little bit more. It's kind of flat right there. So I'm going to have it curve up a little bit. Oops, I'm getting some blue on here. Just want to really emphasize that. Okay, got a little bit blue, but that's okay. It's still wet. I'm just working fast. Okay, probably want to let it dry and then do this. All right, so that's going to be the stem. This is going to be the top of the pumpkin, and then I'm going to look at the next one. So on this one, the stem is going to be kind of pointing this way and curving back down. I'm looking at this one. And then here, actually the shape of this one feels pretty good. So that shape right there is fine. Maybe I can widen this a tiny bit. So I'm just using the white as like a little bit of like a guide. And this looks like I can just cover this. So this goes all the way off the edge. And this little triangle here in the corner is this little area. So just going to cover that a tiny bit, very lightly. I don't even have to cover it completely with the white, just to kind of get a sense of this pumpkin shape. Okay. And this is where it's starting to blend into here. So just going to cover that. Okay, so we have our second pumpkin. And then our last pumpkin, I made a really dark line kind of low. So I think I'm going to draw the shape of this stem. And then here I'm seeing it's just coming up a little bit more. It's going to come in like this. Maybe I'll make it a little higher. So, and then this is it's kind of at an angle here, so actually maybe I'll make it coming up a little bit more. All right. So we're just kind of shaping the pumpkins with this white a little bit. I've seen some places where they draw with pencil and draw it perfectly and then paint very carefully. And my approach is not that way. So I just like to just dive in immediately with paint and then just paint over it if I need to. But it just can get very mechanical, kind of doing it that way where you're drawing a perfect drawing and then trying to go in there and very controlled, paint every little section. And so it doesn't really feel like painting to me at that point. But this is more kind of freeing where you can just kind of move around and change things as you go and not worrying about drawing and erasing so much. Okay, so we have our 3 pumpkins laid out. We can kind of see where the stems are going to go. And so before I do anything in here, I'm going to wait for this to dry a little bit more. And, while you're waiting for that, you can start to write the Hello Fall on here. I think I'm going to use a brush that's a little bit smaller than this, just a tiny bit smaller. You don't really want to start too small with this because then it just looks, you're going to keep building it and having to go over it and over it. So just a tiny bit smaller. This I would say is like, I don't know, this is maybe like half an inch. This is like a little bit less. Okay. Let me get some more white. And on this, it's kind of yellow and white, the writing. Okay. I would recommend that instead of trying to draw it with pencil, just try painting this on a blank sheet of paper just to kind of get the feel for it before you actually put it on here. Okay. So that way, I'll even do that with a little bit of quantity just so you guys can see. Okay. So on the back of this paper even, I'm just going to practice. Okay. I'm going to use my other paper that I have here as a guide and just write, hello. Hello, fall. A little bit. Okay. Practice it, kind of make sure it's going to fit. Sometimes it's just about getting the feel of it, like the motion of it in your arm or in your hand. So before you write it, you kind of have that guide, the right size that it's going to be before you put it on. Okay. But like I said before, if you mess it up, it's not a big deal. You just make more of this paint in the background and then go from there. So here we go. I'm going to write. Make sure I have enough room for the F. So F-A-L-L, yes. And then this is going to be down here. Slowing it down a little bit more than the last time. Hello. And then home. All right. Get this a little bit more flourish right here. You also, you know, you don't have to write it this way, you know, if you want to write it in more of like a blocky letter or something else. Spooky writing or something. And again, it can be anything in here that fits. Happy Halloween, or you want to make it your own. All right, so I'll leave it like that for now. Maybe I'll go over that with a yellow or something else. Okay. So that's that one. All right, so now I'm going to go back. Okay, this is pretty dry over here. So I'm going to take a little bit of my orange, and I'm actually going to add a little bit of white into it because I want this top part to be like a little bit of a brighter orange. Okay, and so I would even do, actually, I'm going to throw in a little bit of yellow also, just to make this more like a, oops, it's quite a lot. Okay, here's the yellow, here's the orange. So it's more like a yellow orange on the top. Okay, put a little bit of white in there. Yellow. And I'm going to switch back to a bigger brush too, since this is a big space. All right. Big, nice big brush. And again, this part on the top of the pumpkin, just trying to make it lighter. I threw in a little bit of white with the yellow and the orange. And this is going to really make your pumpkins kind of glow too. If you just use pure orange, you know, it's not going to look as dimensional unless you shade it in another way, right? Here. All right, so that's that bright yellow going on that section. Same thing on this one. Big brush is going to help you finish it really quickly. It's also a great one to do with kids. Okay, that's just kind of the top of that one, and then the small one. Okay, so it's very bright yellow. And then on the bottom of it, we can go in there with the regular orange, kind of straight out of the tube, straight out of the bottle. I'm actually going to change this water just because this water is so blue. of my blue is showing through here. That's fine. I'm just gonna go over it with a second coat a little later. All right. So with my regular orange, I'm gonna go in here, and as this is still wet, you kind of want to do this because you can kind of get it blended a little bit more easily. Oops. And then as I'm doing this too, I can start to lay out where those little ridges are going to be. So I'm going to look at the picture and kind of see, okay, there's kind of like 2 lines on this side, 2 lines on this side. So I could just kind of start laying that out with this orange, even though probably I'll even outline them a little more with some brown. We kind of got 2. And then the rest of this is just going to be this orange. And again, I'm just going to brush it upwards while this paint is still wet, just to get that blended in a tiny bit. And then this line is going to be the other one this way. That's very wet. I'm filling this all in. And then just like before, I'm just going to kind of brush it upwards to blend it in softly here. Okay. So try to work on it while it's still wet. Not too worried about this since it kind of looks like a shadow anyway. Add some orange right on the edge there. Here. All right, I feel like it needs one more ridge right here in the middle, so there. And same thing, I'm hoping this is still wet here. Yeah, it'll work. So I'm just blending this upwards. All right. And then this one also needs some. This one you can kind of see it looks like the ridges are, you can see them more on the bottom. So I'm just going to try to do that. And it's going to kind of curve in there. And I kind of like how that little bit of outline of orange looks on that one. So I'm going to just go in and outline that. Some bumps on the other side. Okay. And then the last one here, you know, this is where the stem is. So I'm going to try to go around that just so you guys can see where that stem is. But if you happen to paint over it and then, you know, fix it later, that's fine. So this one isn't very wet anymore, but you can see that even if you just flick it with the brush, you can still kind of get that faded look. If you're really struggling with this, you can also just get your finger and blend it. Try that. Or you can also try removing some of the paint that's on there and then flicking it very lightly. That also is kind of like another way to blend it. Okay. And then this one, these images are kind of coming like this. I made that little section too long. Okay, this is the end of my pumpkin right here. Looks like I can do some more orange. Anyway, I'll put some brown over there. All right, so we have generally, everything kind of covered up in here. I'm going to just cover this spot right here that showed through with a little bit of white, that light color, so a little bit of white, a little bit of yellow. Let's get that lightened up a little. Coverage. So just kind of a little second coat wherever you might need it. It's always good to mix a little bit more than you think you're going to use, because then you will end up using it. And talking about paints, I use these Folk Art brand paints. You can find it probably in like a Michael's, maybe Hobby Lobby. They're they have nice pigmentation on them, which sometimes if you get really cheap paints, they really don't. They look really strangely colored, or as soon as you mix them with another color, they really lose their vibrancy. But the Folk Art ones actually tend to work pretty well, so I would say they're a good alternative, to using the more expensive professional paints. But if you guys have any questions about any materials at all, let me know. I'd be happy to share what I think is, the best, or, best cost value. If you have any questions about that, no. All right, so again, I want these pumpkins to kind of dry before I go on with any more details. So what I'm going to do is go in here with this yellow and put in a little bit more of this on here. But since it has some of that blue still showing, I'm going to give it one more coat of white. So when I add the yellow, it's going to not show the background color through. So I'm just adding one more. And if you are looking for coverage, these cheap paints are not going to give you very good coverage with your white. So if you are trying to, learn how to paint, go get yourself a good titanium white. It will actually be a lot more opaque and have more pigment in it. So when you are trying to cover something, it actually covers it up, instead of you having to put layers and layers to get it completely white. Just trying to add a little bit more white. All right. Okay. So I'll let that dry, and then I'll do that last yellow step after. Oh, and maybe a nice gold would look good there. Something metallic or shimmery. I don't know if I have a gold, but might look good. And you guys have something like that. So I think I do have gold. I have this like Folk Art metallic, so maybe I'll use that. All right, so for the stem, I'm gonna get a brown color. And I have a light brown here, but you want a brown that's not going to look too orange, right? So you don't want it to blend in with what you just made. So this is a really light brown. So maybe I'll just use that brown and then maybe mix it. I would go with more like a chocolate brown. So this is probably going to work better, but you know, you try whatever colors you have on hand. If you don't have a brown, you can always make a brown by mixing a little bit of orange and a little bit of black. So let's see how this chocolate brown looks. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So it looks dark enough. And then if I add a little bit of light on it, you know, and give it some highlights. So I'm gonna have this stem, and this is gonna actually come in to the pumpkin. And it's gonna kind of follow these ridges just a little bit. Something like that. And then this little kind of curve on here, really up to you, kind of how swooshy you want to make it. It's a lot of curvature, so this one's from the picture, very vine-like. Okay, I'm using a flat brush, but it might be easier for some people to use a rounded brush. Especially for this little twist. Trying to make it look like these little ridges are kind of connected to that stem. There. A small brush for that little top part. This is a good, nice round brush. One here. This little twist. Kind of exaggerated this one. And I think that one looks fine down there. Okay. And then while these stems are still wet, we can go ahead and add maybe a little bit of white or even some of this light orange. We just want to lighten up this brown a little bit. Or if you have a lighter color brown, you can use that. This is kind of like a caramel color. So I'm just going to go in here and just kind of throw some little ridges on here just to make it look like it's wooden. So I would even say, you know, this is optional. You have to do this, but it just gives it a little texture. Okay. So that's kind of giving the light. You could also, again, this is kind of optional, add a little bit of black. And, you know, with a little bit of black. Adding some little ridges. Just to give it that texture. But again, not mandatory. Okay. So we have the light color, we have this orange color. We could, you know, if you wanted to really kind of make this pop, we could add a little bit of red in here, and it might sound kind of strange for adding red, but in the shadow, it might give it a little bit more kind of vibrant feel. So I'm going to add a little bit of this red with the orange, just to make kind of like a red orange. And we're going to put a little bit of this in that shadow. So, for example, in here, and it's not really going to read as red, it's going to, you know, read more of like just the shadow of this pumpkin. So, let's do a little more. The same thing that I did before, just kind of flicking it to blend it. A little bit in here, cover up this blue that's showing through. And I can even put a little bit on those ridges. Red orange down here. And maybe just a little bit on these ridges. And put regular orange to cover this up a little. Okay. There it goes. And that gives it just a little bit more of that like pop of vibrant color. You know, if you really like how it looks without it, that's fine, but I feel like this needs a little bit more. All right. So this reddish color is going to also really go well with this green that we'll add. And this is just kind of like a decorative green vine that kind of goes throughout this picture. And then this artist just did these little dots on it, but you know, you don't have to do that. It's up to you what kind of detail you want to do. So kind of the last thing we want to look at here is making these ridge lines with a tiny bit of brown, maybe even that light brown. And then we'll start to paint in some of these vines. Okay. So I'm going to get a little bit of that lighter brown. And I'm just going to really kind of define where this edge is. Maybe I'm going to go a little darker. And this line doesn't have to go all the way down to the very bottom. It can just be kind of like suggested in there. Doesn't have to be crazy dark, you know, just lightly brushing it on there. Maybe I'll even outline this pumpkin a little just to really show that edge. This one I'm not even going to put because the line would cut through that vine. So maybe I'll just put a little line down here and just kind of outline the pumpkin. Just a little. I'm outlining that pumpkin here. Maybe there I'll put a little bit more blue just to define that edge. Cleaning up this little edge down here. Really kind of light and loose with these. You definitely don't want to press down and then just drag it with a lot of pressure, right? Because then you're going to get a very fat, thick line that won't really work with this. And this one again, I'm just going to kind of outline the pumpkin a little. And really define that line. cleaning that up a little bit. All right. So a little bit of this blue just to touch up these little edges. Don't really work with what I have, so it kind of just looks fuzzy right here instead of it like looking like texture. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of blue in there just to clean that up. This is kind of a stray white line, so I'm painting that. And then this little corner needed some more blue anyway, so just put some in there. All right. So we have our nice, big, vibrant pumpkins. And then we're going to go in with some green and add that in. Let's see, what is my green? Running out of space here. Tray. Okay, thinner brush for this. This green is looking very kind of creamy, so I think I'm gonna add some yellow. I don't like how pasty that green looks, so let's see. Help for now. Well, here's like a lime-ish lime green. Here's my regular green that I had. So, okay, I guess I'll just use this. All right, so we just want to add a little bit of like fun little vines in here. And we have a little bit of a vine like this, and maybe this has a little leaf. I'm not sure exactly what the leaves of pumpkins look like, but you imagine they're a little bit broad. Let's see, this one has a leaf coming off the back of it. Kind of mixed into this. This one I think is very important right here in the corner. It kind of helps to frame the whole picture. So in the sample, it's kind of just like a big spiral. And then you can kind of put leaves along that. See, and just spiral right here, kind of coming up as if it's coming up from the ground. Where else you might want to put one? Maybe there's one coming over here. A bit more green. And maybe we have a little over here. Okay. So that's the regular green, the grass green. And then with this lighter color, we can just add some little detailing if you want to on that. see if I can make this more yellow. You know what? I have this. I have a metallic green, which might look cool. Oops. That's not gonna look good if it's all mixed, not mixed up right. Eee. Very gooey. So if you have any metallic paints or, want to try it, this is a great project to try with this. This is still very wet, so I'm just going to throw it on there just to kind of see what it looks like. Just gives it a little bit of that metallic feel to it, just to see what happens. Okay, try that. Still trying to open this one. Here we go. Much brighter green. So with this like really lime green, I can just go in and add, a little bit of detailing on these leaves just to make them pop a little. Want to get too crazy with that. A little bit of that brighter green just helps to make them pop. All right. So we have that, and then oh yeah, I was gonna do gold for that writing. Let's see how that looks. See? It doesn't show up very well on the camera, so I think I'm gonna switch back and make it yellow, just so you guys can see it. I mean, I think it might even work if you painted it a certain color and then added a little bit of gold on top, because the gold paint is so thin. So it might work, but right now I'll just make it yellow. And again, yellow is very transparent, which is why I made the white twice on there before I add the yellow. Else you're not going to be able to show how vibrant it is. It's going to look like it's like this area, like the other colors showing through, right? All right. This. Oh, that's really bright. Hello, fall. With this yellow, very lightly, I'm just gonna throw in just a little bit of highlights on the ridges of these pumpkin edges here. And because it's very like softly added in here, you know, it should just make it look like a highlight. It's not really going to keep its true yellow color. So just to give it a little bit of pop, yellow. Okay. There we go. Very softly. All right. That is a very bright hello fall. Okay. So we have our finished painting and always play it back or slow it down if you need to. Thank you guys so much for joining, and hopefully you catch another video of mine later.